Okay. Hey guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So everyone grab some lunch, wraps. We have some crackers. We forgot the cheese, so I'm sorry about that. I know, my favorite part. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming in today. I know it's chilly, and I'm not prepared for this myself. I'm trying to find out where all my sweaters are, and I just moved, so everything is still in boxes. I don't know where my hat is. But yes, thank you guys for coming in today. Thank you to Techlahoma, who's our main sponsor. They paid for our lunch today. Thank you, Techlahoma. And thank you, Star Space 46, for giving us this space for free, which is awesome. And side note, they have some co-working on Wednesdays that's free. So I know Doji in the back, myself, maybe Max, one of our speakers, we're gonna hang out there later. If anyone else wants to co-work and just test out the space, grab a free Red Bull. A little bit about Techlahoma. We are a nonprofit, volunteer-run organization. They put on, they have 39 different user groups. They put on 2 conferences, soon to be 3. We are bringing a UX conference next year. No official details yet, but we officially have the go-ahead from Techlahoma that we can spend some money. We're gonna host it in Tulsa next year, so just keep your eyes peeled for that. And code of conduct, it's extremely important to us that every member feels safe and respected. So if you have any issue at an event, please let any leaders know or go directly to Techlahoma and say something to someone. We can submit an incident report, etc. If you want to get more involved, you can always go to help-wana.techlahoma.org to find ways that you can volunteer. Or again, reach out to any leader, whether it's Gaia, Alec, Doji, or myself for this group. Or go to that Techlahoma board and we can find ways to help you volunteer. Also, we're streaming on Twitch, which is exciting. So if you guys have an Amazon Prime account, you can sign up and Techlahoma will get a small portion if you actually attach your account to Twitch. So stream. You don't have to come to every meetup, especially if it's chilly, or if you're in Tulsa, you can still watch our events and our speakers and support us. And I think that's it in terms of official announcements. So today we're doing something special. We're trying to reach out to our community, and right now that means Tulsa. So we had both Alec and Doji go up and give speeches to Tulsa UX. And today we have 2 Tulsa UX speakers coming here. One is going to be remote, Karina. I'm excited to have her give an awesome talk on growing UX. And then we have Maxx Crawford here, who's the founder of Tulsa UX, to give a talk on the UX of video games. So I think we're going to start with Karina, who we're going to remote in. This is our first time doing this, so bear with us on any technical glitches. Doji, you just flag me and say if anything's not working or working.
She is. We can't talk to her through the mic.
Okay.
So we're kind of texting her now.
Okay.
I'm letting her know now. Cool.
Yay! Here's Karina. Give her a big hand.
Okay. I'm letting her know now. Cool.
Yay! Here's Karina. Give her a big hand.
Hey!
I'm letting her know now. Cool.
Yay! Here's Karina. Give her a big hand.
Hey!
I'm letting her know now. Cool.
All right, can everybody hear me all right? Okay, perfect. So thank you so much for being willing to work with me and doing this remotely. I'm, I guess, Tulsa's resident 90-year-old. We drove from Dallas last night, super rainy, and so this morning I was a little extra hesitant. So thank you so much, everyone, for setting this up so I could still do this talk remotely. I wanted to talk to you all today about doing how to manage UX from an agency perspective and what that means growth-wise, what that means for managing workflow, and what that means with working with integrated departments. So let me go ahead and share my screen with all of you. All right, perfect. So a little bit about myself. My name is Karina Buvaylik. I am Russian. We moved here to the States in 1996. I have been working as a UX designer and analyst for about 3 years now at Cosby Harrison Marketing in Tulsa. I graduated in 2015, and I'm currently living in Tulsa with my dog, like 80 houseplants, a boyfriend, etc. I love to travel. I love to go to coffee shops, meet people, etc. But one thing that I also really, really love doing is having the opportunity to talk to other people that do what I do. I'm sure a lot of you have been in a situation where you're at a family event or talking with friends and they're like, what do you do? And you're like, hey, I do UX, and blank stares. That's it. So it's so glad to be here. All right. So what I really wanted to talk over with you is kind of an overview of some of the few challenges that a small team faces. Right now, it's actually a team of one. That's myself. And how, any interns or any other team members that, I have coming and working with me, how we're able to manage, those challenges, specifically when you're having to work on multiple different client websites, multiple different projects at the same time. Another big one that's a really big challenge working in the agency world specifically is user testing. You're doing work on a crunch timeline, often with very little budget, and trying to find a way to justify that spend, it's important. And then handoffs. One thing that we did not used to do, surprisingly, before I moved into the department is we used to create a deliverable, whip something off and omnigraphal, stick it in Basecamp. Then it went to design, then it went to dev. And then there was always this question of, why does nothing look like, the wireframes or, the expected deliverables, and how to manage, going through and not having those kind of walled garden issues that a lot of, agencies do tend to suffer from. And then beyond UX, what are some other things that you can do to both grow your skill set, as grow your team, and work within your agency and with your stakeholders? So, all right. The big one I wanted to start off with is managing the work. When you're working at this could be either agency, this could be at a place with a younger user experience department, et cetera. One thing is that there's rarely enough team members to manage all of the work, especially when you're working on multiple different projects at one time. And so this is some of the practical work that's helped me over the last few years that I continue to iterate and work through. And the first one is working with the clients. There tends to be sometimes a little bit of a hubris within our industry of, we know what's best for the user, we know what's best for the product, et cetera. But you really can't do that effectively without working with that client. They've been in business often, for decades. Clearly, there's value and knowledge there, even if they don't understand what the user experience portion of it is. So I found out that there is, actually, you need to pull up some data on it, but there was a direct correlation when we started including clients both with an onboarding document and then actually talking them through, providing them with both examples and expectations of what the deliverables and the nature of the work is. So things like information architecture, site mapping, questions, developing wireframes and prototypes. It reduced a lot of us having to do rework and confusion with the client. So instead of coming into a meeting with just your, low fidelity, no bells and whistles wireframe, and the client asking, wait, is this our final design? And you're like, no. But if they don't know. And so this has reduced a significant amount of time and revision on our work. It also prevents us from having to do a ton of, work and design, et cetera, that will have to be revised because we did too much at the beginning. The next one is reuse when possible. I do know for a lot of our clients within these verticals, their industries, their target audiences, they're very similar. So if you have a lot of oil and gas, manufacturing clients, for example, in this area, they're both how those companies function within generating leads or who uses their websites or apps, on site. A lot of that data is something that you can recycle. You don't have to start from scratch every single time. Save yourself hours of work, do your validation, do your testing, but you don't have to start from scratch every single time. I cannot reiterate the value of using historical data when applicable. And then streamlining deliverables. One big issue I had when I really first started in UX is, looking at blogs, looking at through books, through examples, going through Medium, LinkedIn, et cetera, is I wanted to create these huge, beautiful, personas. It's like, okay, how do I set up, this perfect image and then all of these persona scenarios? Or I wanted to make these, wireframes that were very high fidelity that really took up a lot of time that I didn't have. And so over time, what I've learned is that ultimately having, either a lower fidelity wireframe, and maybe a higher fidelity prototype, the bones of the website that you need were exactly what was just enough of what the client could understand. And it also prevented me from, I guess the word I'm looking for is over inserting myself in visual design. So since I'm not a UI designer and I do work with our design team, it was always very important for me to make sure that the strategy and the functionality that I have, in our user experience strategy does not, impede on their work, but complements it. And last but not least, resisting the urge to overcomplicate. I mean, I cannot reiterate how often I would make this work and then get frustrated because I bottlenecked or the deliverables had to be, revised, and how much time I could have saved on, revising complicated work. And part of the reason all of this is important is because I don't know if any of you follow the UX design memes, but I saw this one not too long ago, and this is kind of how I felt for a while after, a couple of years, mostly because at agency world, you kind of age in dog years. You're like, oh, I've only been doing this for a little while. And then you're like, could be 10 years, could be 5 years, don't know. All right, the next topic. And this one has been a pain point for us personally. And it's absolutely true. There's a lot of trends with UX, there's a lot of changes coming up. But UX without user research is not UX. And this point is valuable in knowing that not everything is set in concrete, but we are there for the user. And this seems obvious, but usually what I've found is that the first thing to be slashed from a UX budget is spending money on user research. And it's a little frustrating, but there's a way around that. There's a way to find either find time or budget, et cetera. You are better off having 5 users than none. I mean, any testing that you can do would be absolutely valuable. And what I've found to be the best option for us actually is using something with remote testing. This is actually a screen cap of when I did some remote testing for an international e-commerce website. We did tests on their original website to see where there's weaknesses, user pain points, etc., and then to translate that into an improved experience on that new e-commerce platform. I have found this to be probably with a really, really small team. You can do a pretty decent amount of research using something like user testing, ping pong, etc. It provides you both with a platform to, find users, to be able to provide, compensation if it's required for the user testing. You're able to get transcripts, access to that wider pool, and it's something that's one person can manage. You have flexibility with your calendar. This actually we were testing for people in the UK, and so I was able to find a lot of time out of traditional hours to be able to go and find the users, go through about 30 minutes worth of testing, and then go back and look for those kind of key statements that would either that would validate the recommendations for our changes, and then be able to have those snippets for the stakeholder to see as necessary. And this is just an example. I saw this at a conference, actually, a video from Chicago, and talking about user testing. And this is from a cartoon, but it's actually kind of a hilarious example of how if you think something is super simple and super easy to do, and then you launch it, and this sort of drinking situation happens. This is why testing is the most important thing, I would say, that needs to be present in your process. Don't cut that. Collaboration. Earlier I mentioned about how when I started and took over the department, we had a very walled off process. And early in my UX journey, I really didn't understand how much of a hindrance that was. Over time, reading, research, talking to user experience designers that are a lot, with years worth of projects underneath. The one thing that I saw the best of them do is making sure that they involve development and design early on. It has saved us a tremendous amount of time and disconnect with these with the projects that we've had them involved early in the meeting, either in the discovery process, either with talking through the design stages, technical requirements documents, because you can create this incredible an incredible idea of this is a perfect UX process. The testing says this. I've seen other websites do, et cetera, but then you go and you've sold this to the client, you've got everything written off, and then design either has a hang up or development says with our current team, this is either impossible or too expensive. And then you have the option of either losing a ton of money on resources to try and build this, or you have to go back and rework a lot of your UX work, either through wireframing or technical requirements, et cetera. So once again, that collaboration has been incredibly invaluable to me. It's also made my work a little bit faster and a little bit easier to replicate moving over time, because instead of having to go and ask development or design what's feasible, what's doable, I now have this repository of knowledge. Which leads me to that next one, is having a central area for everything. I don't know if a lot of you use Basecamp. I know we do. We quote unquote live and die by it. But having your design system in in Vision or in Figma, and then having your technical requirements somewhere floating in Basecamp or in Google Drive is a very inefficient way of working. Being able to have everything in one area, from what design is doing to development to staging environment to all of the research and UX methodology, having it in one area is incredibly invaluable for your team. And it's made it possible to where I don't waste, when it adds up, hours looking for everything I need to start a project or to reference something. And then those handoff meetings. Before we added an actual technical project manager, sometimes we would do the handoff meetings, but generally it would be a kind of stick it in Basecamp, add some comments, and kind of wish them good luck. It provides like, hey, here's my wireframe, here are all of my documents, here's all these links, etc. Okay, good luck, you know, and then you wonder, why is everything so, the final product looks so strange or doesn't function or nobody tested it, etc. What we do now is we have a meeting with all of the departments. We go through all of the documentation. If we're at the design phase, etc., if we get to dev, we all sit in there and we talk through every phase. And while it seems like it takes longer, it really doesn't if you think of the flow of the work. So as one project is maybe on development stage, a different one's on design, and so it's kind of moving along. And so having those really in-depth handoff meetings with documentation and clarity, any revisions notated, made, and then confirmed, saves, oh my gosh, yeah, tons of time to start like actual taking like documentation of like with a, I don't know, an Excel sheet or something. And then staying involved. Handoff meetings are not a reason to say like, okay, set it and forget it. Your job in UX is not done just because your portion of it is. At any point in time, it is your opportunity to go and see, okay, I see an issue that's happening here, coming back and either offering some insights or recommendations or help as needed, because at the end of the day, if something launches and doesn't function the way that it should, it's going to be up to you to go figure out where it went wrong and how you can fix it. And that's not great project or time management. And so all of these things, that we've touched on is how you can manage your current workflow now, make it better and more streamlined and more collaborative, so that you aren't having to either repeat a process or having to double back on something that easily could have been addressed moving forward. All right, and then this kind of last topic that I have is when I first started UX, I came into it after working in search marketing, working in analytics. And so for me, I had a lot of opportunity to learn about stakeholder businesses, learning about how different areas of marketing work. And it's it's been invaluable. So it's a lot of information too, but knowing the foundations of how users find things within Google's algorithm, how Google ranks, or any other platform, Google being the main example, understanding search, technical SEO, understanding how things can be set up in code to be able to be measured through clicks, etc., will provide you a better depth and understanding of the work, so that when you are building something out, you can also think ahead of how can this help our marketing team improve the work, improve their either campaigns, their marketing, etc. And that way we can measure it, because what that shows is that we have now data that we can show to a stakeholder that does tend to generate more work. There's not this gap of, well, we launched this product, marketing's off to the side doing here, oh, and there's no clickable, phone number anywhere to be seen on the landing page. It helps kind of bring everything cohesively together. So the next one's find a mentor or a community. I know both being involved with Tulsa UX and then being very active within the international UX Slack channels, et cetera, talking to people on LinkedIn, I found them to be incredibly receptive to providing feedback. I recently spoke to the director of UX over at GitLab through LinkedIn, just asked for a couple of recommendations. And she was very, very forthcoming and very quick to respond. That's not always the case. I've had people say no, but for the most part, they are willing to work and to communicate with you, because at the end of the day, we don't want just more people knowing or talking about UX. We want them also to be of a higher quality UX practitioner. And that's for myself included, because at this stage, it's not, a brand new designer, but also not someone who is considered, an expert in the field. And so the more knowledge, and the more, mentoring and community feedback that you can get, the better you'll be. One that I did use is UX daily design challenges. That's a really good way to work on your skill set, kind of either thinking off the cuff or working on projects that you normally would not have a chance to work on. There's an option for something like Reddit. That one's a give and take. I've posted, I think, a quiz there a while back over a very sensitive subject matter. So the feedback was honest, let's just say that. But that's definitely an opportunity to post something there, and you do have the option of anonymity. And then the continuing education and experimentation. I recently started doing IDF Foundation, taking their classes, looking at their work. And honestly, there's stuff there that I thought I knew or I had an assumption of, not accurate. And it's like, oh my goodness. And so the more education that you can get, take classes, read books, go back and look over old documentation. What are some of the practices that you're doing that either might be outdated or the data says that that's no longer accurate, will really, really help hone those skills as being a UX practitioner of higher, better skill set, higher quality, being able to do work that's important and well put together in, a shorter amount of time going on. And last but not least, my last slide. So this is the resources I've provided for some of the things that I use, some of the different tools and educational groups that I follow through. Most of these are pretty well known. Some may not be, but for the most part, it's, Nielsen Norman Group, IDF, the Adaptive Path Group. That's definitely some of the recommendations there. So I can't quite hear you all, but if you'd like to ask some questions, I am available. Let me...
Great. Test 1, 2. Hot dog. The mic is live. So again, check the Techlahoma Slack Tulsa UX channel or DM her or us on our own. We're happy to answer any of those questions. Put all my stuff over here. She did that all muted, so she had no feedback from us at all. We were a quiet room. That was a weirdly talking to a camera. Good on her. Okay. Let me share my screen the right way. This will take just a second. I assume it's my mouse. Give me 1 second. I'll use keyboards. I just need to get. I don't know where I'm trying to get my mouse over here. I'm sorry. Down, maybe? Okay, I see. I think we're good now. You're good? Yeah, we just had to fake us out. Okay. All right. Hey everyone, we're ready to get started. Okay. I'm Maxx Crawford. I'm here to talk to you today about a very brief history of video game UX. I have been in the industry for the last decade, both as a developer and a designer and as a researcher, analytics. Really wore a lot of different hats through a couple different agencies. And then for the last 7 months, I've been working with Mozilla as a front-end engineer. So I've had lots of different touch points, all the while running Tulsa UX, which has been a really good outlet just to bring in other people and kind of advance the whole community's knowledge set. So it's been really exciting. You can find more about me at my simple website, maxxcrawford.com, or on Twitter for terrible tweets I wouldn't worship. So quick author's note, this is hyper subjective. Pretty much games that I like or knew about. There's a lot other games out there, so definitely let me know if I don't cover your favorite so that I can add to this, which has already done. I've already added stuff to it just from people saying, why not this game? So this is a little bit more interactive talk, so feel free. I will ask you to yell stuff out to kind of see what we're all thinking. So real quick, what makes good UX in a video game? Does anyone have any opinions on that? Easy to figure out. Anything else? Think about what? Hot dog. That's the number one word on there is intuitive. We got it. High score. So I've broken down good video game UX into 4 kind of specific areas. The first being intuitive. This needs to be easy to understand and use. That discoverability and learnability to a video game is what's going to draw people in at the very beginning, which in any kind of storytelling setting is going to keep them present throughout the rest of the game by having that learning moments happen easily and accessibly. In addition to that, it needs to be immersive. So your UI needs to be in context of the game and actually make you add to the experience of whatever story you're telling. In addition to that, a lot of your messaging has to be consistent. So if you present a certain action in a certain way, it needs to be consistent throughout all the screens or iterations of that. Again, aiding to discoverability and learning of it, they need to know, if I look here, this is where that information is going to be. Especially in some specific games, your reaction is specific, so you need to be able to look at that quickly and go back to it. And then finally, it needs to have some fun factor. It's video games. It's for entertainment purposes, so that's important to remember at the end of the day, that you maintain that sense of delight. So let's get started. We're going to look at some screenshots from games. There'll be some points to be like, hey, what do you notice? And you can yell stuff out too. So I'll, again, keep this as a two-way conversation, even though I have a microphone. Okay, so up first, Pong, the proverbial first video game. It has a real bare bones UI with a total of 6 objects on the screen total to count through it. What I wanted to highlight here is how they're communicating the score, specifically with these 2 big old numbers at the top of the screen. What is missing from this UI that would be beneficial? Anything you guys see? Say it again. Both? Yeah. Every one of those is valid. It's missing all the other things is pretty much it. So there's no telling what the maximum score is to what the end of this game is. It's 11. There's nothing there saying that. There's outside of like actual spatial positioning on the screen, you don't know if the left score represents the left Pong or not. So you could do that with, it's all monochromatic right now, so there's no color inferences. Everything we all just said shows up in later iterations of Pong. So they made lots of different variations, and they all improved on this UI. Up next, Pac-Man. Is everyone familiar with Pac-Man? Cool. Yes, that's good. Thank you. So this is where we're going to start seeing a lot more dashboard UI in the sense of having pertinent information that's populated while you're playing. Specifically calling out, they have the high score, and it's denoted with a label. You'll notice the score next to it doesn't have a label. However, through animation, you would see it go up based on your progress through the game, so you can infer through animation that it's your current score. However, there's some inconsistency with them labeling one thing and not the other. So that's definitely something when thinking through the 4 tenets, consistency here is kind of falling flat. In addition to that, they have lives remaining. However, they're using the actual character UI. This is kind of competing tenets where you have what I would say immersiveness by utilizing the in-game person and then not actually communicating intuitively what it is. So that's something that is in that gray area, and this is all subjective, don't forget. But the other thing I was going to point out here is there's fruit on the bottom. I've played this game many times. I know they're worth points. I don't understand why they're there at the bottom. So that's one of those, but why? Kind of bits. Okay, E.T., the extraterrestrial, panned as the worst video game in history. What does it do? Has anyone who's familiar with this? Quick show of hands. So, can someone tell me what the purple bar designates? Can someone tell me what the blue bar at the bottom designates? So this is direction, hints, and available actions, which only has one area for it. And this is actually your energy life count. As you move, it would slowly degrade. Again, having some animation, so there's a little bit of, by looking at these slides statically, sometimes we can't infer that, but know that this makes no sense and is difficult to play. All right, so the same year, Tron came out. So to kind of give a variation of both on what an arcade machine could do versus an Atari 2600 home unit could do, there's definitely some graphical improvements. So this is the mini game select. When you start a Tron game, you can choose one of 4 games, and they're at random. You have 4 quadrants separated by color. You have a countdown timer. And you have a high score that's labeled as such. And then you have what level you're on based on each of those sections with some titles there. Again, those change throughout each level, so there's some inference through animation. Punch Out. So according to Nintendo, when they had the unprecedented success of Donkey Kong. They made this really rash decision to invest in thousands and thousands of TVs. And they had so many TVs that they asked the developers, can you please invent a game that utilizes 2 TVs, because we have too many. So the team decided that a 2-screen system could be used to make a boxing game. The reasoning is that these 2 screens could be used in tandem, one on top of the other, to enhance the experience, to make it feel like a real boxing match, with the fight information at the top and then the action at the bottom. And one of the real design benefits, by increasing just the entire usable area of your screen, you now have a much more focused area of the action. A great example here of actually using labels and being consistent about it. You can know what your score is, the bonus, what round of the fight you're in, who you're playing, and then in the bottom corner, or in the bottom level, actually the life of your boxer, similar to all other iteration fighting games. So definitely, just by having the screen capacity, they were able to increase the overall usability of the game. Duck Hunt. This is a fantastic example of immersive UI and trying to put it in more context. Specifically, the ducks remaining actually use duck icon symbols. Same for shots remaining using bullets. Again, this is a nice way visually to keep you immersed in the hunt. Street Fighter 2. So here we actually have a character select screen. What I really appreciate about this UI is by using color and really just by using color, you're able to see which side of the screen you're selecting. So player 1 is red. It has a red outline around the character select, and then it also makes all the other nations transparent for what nation you're actually selected with. But this was a nice use case compared to Pong, where everything was white. This actually has some color reference, so you can see who's who on the selection. And then again, and similar to, you can see Punch-Out actually really impacting this game with having your life count here, the same health score meter, etc., all related here in a different capacity, but trying to share that information in a new way. Super Mario Kart. Here we have, very similar to Punch-Out, we have split screens, and utilizing that, even though it's on your own screen, they're virtual split screens to convey competing pieces of information, including a map, your place, coin count, etc. But again, looking for ways to designate those 2 areas. And then on their select screen, they have a pattern that I think we've seen across lots of UI in modern day, and that's confirmation. So when you select somebody, it's going to ask if you're sure you want to do that. And then one of a UX tenet of always giving your user agency, giving your users agency to undo choices they make. This is a fantastic example of that. Doom. So this heads-up display for first-person shooter. Here, what's nice is rather than having some sort of, because they have so much UI crammed in the bottom, rather than doing any sort of variable graphs, they're using numbers to represent your life score. In addition to that, they also have the Doom guy's face gets worse and worse as you get more and more injured. They have a sprite sheet that kind of covers all of that. Again, this is where immersive UI really keeps you in there, in the game, part of a storytelling measure to show how he's doing. This is an intense slide. All right, GoldenEye. So this is a fantastic example of skeuomorphism, and again, trying to place you in the game in an immersive standpoint. So the UI is a bunch of folders that when you go into it, still open up. Your cursor is a crosshair, etc. So this definitely has the making your UI look like it's IRL. Even more so in game, when you pause it, you look down at your watch, and they have a watch UI to kind of walk through the thing, including the clock in the background. One thing they do have that's really interesting that I can, as a web developer, can appreciate and hate is pagination dots at the bottom. So when you would go to slides, the squares on the bottom would light up based on the active slide you're on. All right, Blitz. So one thing that this sports game and other sports games did, and I think this really speaks to, again, being consistent and being intuitive, is it's using real sports UI. So when you're watching football, you're expecting the team score, ball possession, time on clock, what quarter it is, to be made available in a little heads-up display. They mirror that in-game. And so from picking the controller for the first time, if you've seen football and you're playing a football game, there's no barrier, there's no friction there, and you understand it. So when thinking through UI for video games, if you can mirror real life stuff, if there's context for it, it makes it very much easier to jump into. Then here, just using color and border around the different plays to select makes this, you know, which one you're selecting in a field of UI. This is one of those slides like ET to show what lack of hierarchy can do to a select screen. You'll have things like this, where it's just they could make everything clickable, so why don't we? It's a mixture of being immersive and also being unusable. So yeah, pick your battles, I guess, which is probably an even better Age of Empires joke. Here, again, using color selection, you can see that what they navigate through here when talking about health is when you select multiple items in the playfield, you can see the health meter for each and every item you've selected, using both color and a level bar to show that. We've got two more, and we're almost wrapping up, so we're sliding into home. Wii Sports. Okay, so what's nice here, specifically as an intuitive game, is Wii Sports was made specifically to show off what the Wii could do. It was more of a demo capabilities type game. Even in their getting started screen, they show the remote, they show where the buttons are and what you need to be hitting to do that. From a intuition standpoint, it was a very, I say, unintuitive, because we had gone from just holding remotes to now being able to move with your hands. Having this sort of level of direction made this really accessible to all ages. And additionally, this also crossed language barriers by just doing this, by just having the A/B pressing and showing people how to touch it. Here, from a consistency standpoint, they had a nice hover effect that would show up anytime you hovered over any of the items. Again, knowing what's selected. If you get through one screen, you understand how the selection works. And this is where consistency can really pay off. And then finally, we have Grand Theft Auto 4. From an immersive standpoint, when you wanted to change stuff in the menu, you didn't get a full start or stop menu screen. You used your phone and were able to go up and down and select stuff. Again, this was a very much an immersive solution to handling that. So what do all the slides, except for Age of Empires and Pong and ET, have in common? They use the following four things. The use of color to show like and unlike actions or grouped items. They use labels where they can, where it makes sense. Their consistent placement throughout in each of the games, where you're expecting, when you're playing a fighting game, you're expecting to see some sort of life meter at the top or bottom of the screen. And you're using animation where possible to infer information. That's it. Thank you all. Again, I'm Max. Hit me up on Slack. We'll talk. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. Oh, I don't know. It's from Google. It's a Google font, like something. Because I did this in Google Slides, so this was a pretty straightforward, lifetime. Cool.
Thank you so much, Tulsa UX, for lending your voice to Oklahoma City UX community down here. Great to hear your knowledge and get to meet you too. So let's continue to collaborate, connect, be aware of our friends up in Tulsa. Lots of cool stuff happening up there, smart creatives doing smart fun things. If maybe we can get a little field trip sometime going up to Tulsa UX meetup. If anybody's interested in actually going up to the meetup and doing a presentation, giving a talk, let us know. Connect with Maxx on Slack, Techlahoma Slack. They're definitely interested to hear Oklahoma City too. Follow back, right? Heads up, next month, our November meetup is being moved up 1 week because we are entering holiday season. We are going to hear from Brandy, who I interviewed, was it last month? Yeah, last month I interviewed Brandy. She's a UX designer up at American Fidelity, and she's going to give us a talk on Gestalt in design, which is basically principles for how to construct a UI that is informed by the psychology of perception. Very cool stuff. So if you want more from Brandy, come back next month. December meetup, we are working on an evening extended, hopefully kind of holiday vibe, holiday party vibe meetup that is, we're going to be doing a portfolio review. So details are coming. We're still figuring out the logistics, but that'll be fun. And it will also be a little bit earlier in the month, too, to stay out of the December holidays. Any other announcements, including job openings, that anyone has to make? Cool. Thanks so much for coming out, guys. See you soon.